You know those moments when you feel trapped inside expectations that were never yours? Moments when you catch yourself doing things simply because everyone else does them? When you silence your own thoughts because they don't match society's neatly packaged definitions of good and bad, right and wrong. Deep inside, you feel the tension, the desire to break free, but also the fear of stepping outside the lines. The struggle to be authentic, yet the pressure to remain acceptable. Nietzsche begins here. He begins where most people feel stuck, between who they are and who they were told to be. He speaks to those who sense that their mind has more depth than the world allows, who feel that inherited beliefs weigh heavily on their growth, and who want the courage to create life on their own terms. This is the book that helps you break free from moral cages, mental conformity, and borrowed truths. Welcome to Top Summary, where you learn from successful thinkers, transform your life, and see your growth unfold. If you're new here, we bring you inspiring book summaries and practical lessons to help you grow faster, think deeper, and live better. Today, we dive into one of the most powerful philosophical works ever written, Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. A book that challenges everything you think you know about morality, truth, society, and even yourself. Nietzsche was a philosopher who refused to accept lazy thinking. He believed that most people live with second-hand beliefs, holding opinions not because they discovered them, but because they inherited them. In a world where culture, religion, and society constantly tell you what to think, Nietzsche asks a bold question. What if most of those truths are not truths at all? What if they are tools designed to shape your behavior, limit your desires, and constrain your potential? And what if the real strength, the real growth, comes when you stop looking for absolute right or wrong and start thinking independently? This book matters today because we live in a time of noise. A world where opinions spread faster than understanding, where the loudest voice is mistaken for the wisest, and where people are encouraged to follow trends instead of following themselves. Nietzsche offers an escape from that. He teaches you how to become mentally free, how to think with depth, and how to rise above shallow, herd-like thinking. The book begins by challenging one of the strongest assumptions of human civilization, that morality is universal. Nietzsche says it's not. What you call good or bad depends entirely on history, culture, power, and psychology. For example, a society that values obedience will call obedience good. A society led by warriors will call courage good. A religion built on humility will call pride sinful. But none of these definitions are eternal. They are constructed, created, reinforced, and then passed down to you as if they were absolute. This doesn't mean there is no morality. Instead, Nietzsche asks you to see morality as something humans create, and therefore something you can question, examine, and refine, rather than blindly accept. Imagine someone who grows up hearing that ambition is selfish, confidence is arrogance, and questioning traditions is disrespectful. Without realizing it, they build their entire life around avoiding these behaviors, even though these very qualities might be essential for their growth. Nietzsche wants you to notice how these hidden moral rules operate inside you, shaping your decisions before you even have a chance to choose. He invites you to stand back, observe, and ask, who decided this? Why? And does it truly serve me? Nietzsche then moves deeper, arguing that people don't seek truth, they seek comfort. We prefer beliefs that make life simpler, easier, predictable. That's why most people accept ready-made answers instead of wrestling with difficult questions. But great thinkers, he says, are different. They don't want comforting lies. They want uncomfortable truths. They are willing to be alone, misunderstood, and even criticized if it means thinking clearly. In your daily life, this shows up when you stop agreeing with ideas just because everyone around you supports them. It shows up when you stop nodding along and start asking genuine questions. It shows up when you stop choosing paths that others say are right and start choosing the path that feels true for you. Nietzsche believed that truth is not something you discover passively. It requires strength. It demands courage. You have to be willing to confront your own biases, your own illusions, and even your own limitations. Think of a student who blindly follows a career path chosen by family, or a professional who suppresses their own passion because society says it's impractical. Nietzsche would say the struggle is not between good and bad. It's between borrowed values and authentic values. Between inherited morality and chosen morality. Between living reactively and living intentionally. He also talks about a psychological force that controls most people without them realizing it. The herd instinct. Humans want acceptance. We want approval. We want to fit in. And because of this, we constantly adjust ourselves, our opinions, our desires, our dreams, to match the group. The herd instinct is subtle. It shows up when you stop yourself from expressing an unpopular opinion. When you ignore your own instincts because others might judge you. When you choose stability over growth because it's safer. Nietzsche sees this instinct as the greatest enemy of individuality. Not because the group is bad, but because the group rewards sameness and punishes originality. If you want to grow, you must be willing to think outside the group. He calls this the beginning of becoming a free spirit. A free spirit is someone who can examine beliefs without fear, question traditions without guilt, and form opinions based on deep understanding rather than social pressure. This doesn't mean rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It means independence of mind. It means looking at the world with your own eyes, not borrowed lenses. It means having the emotional strength to stand alone when needed. One of Nietzsche's most powerful ideas is that every belief, every value, every morality originates from someone's perspective. There is no neutral viewpoint. What a weak person calls evil, a strong person might call power. What a fearful person calls dangerous, a courageous person calls opportunity. What one culture praises, another condemns. This perspective-based thinking can transform your mindset. Instead of taking your emotions and judgments as absolute, you begin to ask, what perspective is shaping this? Is this fear speaking? Is this habit speaking? Is this society speaking? And what would a higher, stronger version of me think in this moment? Nietzsche argues that even logic, reason, and philosophy are influenced by human drives and instincts. We like to think we are rational creatures. But behind every belief is an emotion, a desire, a fear, or a need. The philosopher who claims to be objective is often just blind to his own biases. The student who believes he must choose a safe career is not driven by logic. He's driven by fear. The person who claims they don't care what others think often cares very deeply. Nietzsche encourages you to dig beneath the surface of your thoughts. Not to doubt everything, but to understand yourself more deeply. What is really motivating you? What do you truly value? What fears control your decisions? This level of self-honesty can feel uncomfortable, but it's one of the most liberating forms of growth. When you stop lying to yourself, you stop living according to expectations. You start making decisions that reflect your potential, not your fears. You rise above the surface-level morality of good and evil, and instead build a personal code, one that aligns with your values, your strengths, and your vision for your life. Nietzsche also warns against absolute certainty. The moment you believe you have all the answers, you stop growing. Flexible thinkers survive. Rigid thinkers break. The world is constantly changing, and wisdom requires the ability to shift perspectives, challenge your assumptions, and remain curious. The people who grow the most in life are those who can hold opposing ideas, explore, question, adjust, and evolve. Nietzsche wants you to cultivate this flexibility, the ability to think beyond labels, beyond binaries, beyond simplistic categories of right and wrong. This first part of Nietzsche's work is an invitation to examine the beliefs you inherited, the values you absorbed unconsciously, and the moral codes that shape your life. It's an invitation to become mentally free, emotionally strong, and intellectually honest. A reminder that growth begins not with gaining new information, but with questioning the information you already have. As Nietzsche moves deeper into his philosophy, he starts revealing one of the most misunderstood yet transformative ideas he ever wrote about: the will to power. Most people reduce this phrase to ambition or dominance, but Nietzsche means something far more internal, far more psychological. The will to power is the force inside every human being that wants to grow, expand, master challenges, and express strength. It is the desire to rise above limitations, not to control others, but to overcome yourself. When a student pushes beyond their fear of failure, that is the will to power. When a professional chooses a difficult path instead of a comfortable one, that is the will to power. When someone refuses to let their past define their future, that too is the will to power. Nietzsche believes that life itself is this constant self-overcoming. Every plant grows upward. Every human instinct pushes forward. Every mind wants to discover, shape, create, and become more. You are not meant to stay the same. Growth is not optional. It is your nature. This changes the way you see struggle. Instead of viewing difficulty as something to avoid, Nietzsche sees it as the very environment that produces strength. You don't grow despite challenges, you grow because of them. Just as muscles only develop through resistance, the mind only becomes powerful through obstacles. A life without discomfort produces a person without depth. Nietzsche says that the greatest individuals in history were not the ones who avoided hardship, but the ones who used hardship as fuel. They understood that pain is not always a signal to retreat. Sometimes it's a signal to rise. He warns, however, that most people misunderstand their own drives. Many people think they seek comfort, peace, or happiness. But hidden beneath those desires is something deeper: the longing to feel capable, powerful, and alive. A comfortable life that lacks challenge eventually becomes suffocating. A life free from struggle becomes a life without meaning. Nietzsche invites you to notice those moments when comfort starts making you restless. When you feel the urge to take a risk, chase a dream, learn something new, or break a pattern. That restlessness is the will to power calling you forward. And when you follow it, you expand. Nietzsche then explores the psychology of different moral systems. Throughout history, societies have created two broad types of morality, one built by the strong and the other built by the weak. The strong, the creators, leaders, innovators, celebrate values like courage, ambition, independence, and self-respect. The weak, those who feel powerless or oppressed, tend to celebrate humility, obedience, patience, and self-denial. Neither system is inherently good or bad. They are simply expressions of different psychological needs. But the danger comes when one system is forced upon everyone. When people who need strength are told to be meek. When people who need ambition are told to feel guilty for wanting more. When independent thinkers are shamed for questioning traditions. This is how societies create mental prisons without walls. People police themselves, censor themselves, limit themselves, all in the name of morality. Nietzsche wants you to step back from these moralities and ask, which values truly elevate me? Which values shrink me? Which ideas liberate me? And which ones chain me? You don't have to accept a moral system just because it's popular or historical. You can build a value system that makes you stronger, not smaller. A personal code that aligns with your goals, your temperament, and your destiny. This doesn't mean abandoning kindness or compassion. Nietzsche is not telling you to become selfish or aggressive. What he warns against is weakness disguised as virtue. When people are afraid to pursue their dreams, they sometimes call it humility. When people tolerate disrespect, they call it patience. When people never take risks, they call it being realistic. But deep down, this is not morality. It is fear. And fear, when repeated enough times, becomes a philosophy. Nietzsche wants you to recognize when your virtues are actually excuses. When your goodness is really avoidance. When your calmness is actually a lack of courage. True morality should elevate you, energize you, and strengthen you. Anything that weakens you is not moral. It's just limiting. He also dives into the idea of masks. Nietzsche says that every person wears multiple masks, versions of themselves that they present to different groups. A person is one way with friends, another way with family, another way at work, and another way when alone. These masks are not lies, they are adaptations. But the danger comes when you forget the difference between the mask and the self. When the role replaces the identity. When the image becomes more important than the reality. Nietzsche encourages you to notice these masks, not to destroy them, but to stay conscious of when you're wearing them. Awareness gives you freedom. You can choose the mask rather than letting the mask choose you. This idea connects to his famous notion of self-overcoming. Nietzsche believes that the purpose of life is not happiness, success, or comfort, but transformation. The person you are today is not your final version. You have layers of potential that can only emerge through challenges, self-reflection, and brave decisions. Think of the times you made a difficult choice and grew because of it. Think of the moments when you surprised yourself with strength you didn't know you had. Nietzsche wants you to make this process conscious. To stop waiting for growth to happen accidentally and start pursuing it intentionally. He believes every individual has a higher self, a more capable, wiser, more courageous version of themselves. But this version only appears when you rise above the limitations of your current self. Self-overcoming is active. It demands honesty, discipline, courage, and vision. At this point in the book, Nietzsche shifts into a deeper discussion about philosophers themselves. He criticized the idea that philosophers are purely rational beings searching for objective truth. He argues that philosophers are guided by their instincts just like everyone else, their desires, their fears, their temperaments. A philosopher who praises self-denial might simply be someone who lacks vitality. A philosopher who promotes strict rules might crave control. A philosopher who worships peace might be uncomfortable with conflict. In other words, philosophy is autobiography expressed in abstract language. When you read a thinker, you're reading their soul. Nietzsche encourages you to apply this lens to modern life as well. When someone gives you advice, notice their temperament. Are they cautious? Adventurous? Fearful? Idealistic? What they call wisdom might simply be a reflection of their personality. Don't accept advice blindly. Understand the psychology behind it. This is one of the most practical tools Nietzsche offers. Every time you hear a strong opinion from society, family, friends, teachers, influencers, leaders, ask, what kind of person would believe this? Does this perspective come from strength or fear? From experience or insecurity? From someone who wants to grow or someone who wants to stay safe? When you learn to decode the psychology behind opinions, you stop being influenced so easily. You begin forming your own judgment. Nietzsche also speaks about the rare individuals he calls free spirits. These are the people who challenge norms, expand ideas, and push humanity forward. They are not rebels for attention, but explorers of truth. They don't attack tradition out of anger. They question it out of curiosity. They don't seek approval. They seek understanding. A free spirit is comfortable with uncertainty. They don't need the world to agree with them. They don't fear being misunderstood. They know that growth often looks like disobedience in the beginning. Nietzsche suggests that anyone can move toward becoming a free spirit by practicing deeper thinking, emotional independence, and intellectual courage. And now, right in the middle of the journey, is a perfect moment for this reminder. If you enjoy our top summaries and storytelling, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this with someone who might need it today. We've got some bonus action items for you at the end, so keep listening. Now, let's get back to the summary. Nietzsche continues by explaining that the world does not reward independent thinkers instantly. Free spirits often feel isolated at first because most people prefer certainty over depth, simplicity over complexity, comfort over truth. But over time, these independent thinkers become the source of new values, new perspectives, and new ways of living. This process is slow, but transformative. Nietzsche encourages you to be patient with your growth. The world might not understand your ideas immediately, but that doesn't make them wrong. A seed doesn't look like a tree, but it carries the potential within. A beginning doesn't look like success, but it contains the path toward it. He touches upon the nature of honesty, a quality he values deeply. But Nietzsche's honesty is different from casual truth-telling. He means honesty with oneself. The courage to see your own motives clearly, to acknowledge your desires without shame, to confront your contradictions without running away. Most people lie to themselves more than they lie to others. They pretend they don't care about things they desperately want. They pretend they are strong when they feel weak. They pretend they are satisfied with their life when they are secretly longing for more. Nietzsche urges you to practice radical self-honesty, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Because the moment you see yourself clearly, you can begin to shape your life consciously. He also discusses the danger of resentment, the emotion that arises when people feel powerless for too long. People who cannot express their desires, cannot pursue their goals, or cannot overcome obstacles often turn their frustration into moral judgment. They judge those who succeed. They criticize those who take risks. They label ambition as greed, independence as arrogance, and confidence as ego. Nietzsche calls this slave morality, not as an insult, but as a psychological description. It is the morality of people who feel defeated by life. Nietzsche warns you to protect yourself from this mindset. When you suppress your desires for too long, they don't disappear. They turn against you. They become bitterness, jealousy, and pessimism. Instead, Nietzsche encourages you to acknowledge your desires openly and pursue them courageously. Desire is not the enemy. Fear is. Avoidance is. Self-deception is. When you embrace your desires with honesty and responsibility, they become a source of energy, creativity, and direction. This is part of what it means to go beyond good and evil. beyond external labels, beyond inherited morality. You begin to see your instincts not as sinful, but as powerful, not as something to suppress, but something to channel. Nietzsche now turns toward the highest point of his philosophy, the courage to create your own values. After tearing down inherited morality, after questioning social expectations, after challenging your deepest assumptions, he doesn't want to leave you in emptiness. His goal is not destruction. His goal is renewal. He wants you to build something stronger in the space you've cleared. He believes that every individual has the power to create a personal value system that is not borrowed, not imposed, not inherited, but chosen. A system that reflects your strengths, your purpose, and your vision for the life you want to live. To create your own values means to stop asking, "What will people think?" and start asking, "What kind of person do I want to become?" It means to stop defining your life by external labels and start defining it by internal clarity. It means choosing courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, and growth over safety. Nietzsche calls this process self-legislation, becoming the author of your character, the designer of your mind, the architect of your destiny. But he knows this path is difficult. It requires solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude, the ability to step back from the noise of the world and listen to your own thoughts. Most people cannot do this because they fear what they might discover. They distract themselves with entertainment, business, or constant social connection. Nietzsche says that true clarity emerges when you give yourself space to think. Solitude is where you meet yourself. And when you meet yourself honestly, you discover your unique strengths, your natural drives, your deepest values, the foundation of a life that is fully yours. From here, Nietzsche introduces another powerful idea, the distinction between the higher self and the everyday self. The everyday self is reactive, shaped by habits, fears, comparisons, routines, and external pressures. It makes choices based on convenience or social expectations. But the higher self is visionary. It sees beyond short-term comfort. It wants long-term fulfillment, mastery, growth. It wants to create something meaningful and enduring. Nietzsche believes that a meaningful life is the daily effort to close the gap between these two selves. Every moment you act from strength instead of fear, from clarity instead of confusion, from purpose instead of habit, you become closer to the person you are meant to be. He reminds us that growth is not loud. It doesn't happen in dramatic moments. It happens in quiet decisions. Waking up a little earlier than your excuses. Saying no to what drains you. Saying yes to what scares you. Speaking your truth when it would be easier to stay silent. Choosing action when the mind wants comfort. These small acts of courage transform you from the inside out. Over time, the higher self becomes your natural state. You become someone who leads their life, not someone who follows it. Nietzsche then addresses the topic of greatness. Not fame, not recognition, but inner greatness. He says that greatness begins with the willingness to carry responsibility for your own mind, your own choices, and your own future. It begins when you stop blaming circumstances and start shaping them. When you stop waiting for permission and start moving on your own authority. When you stop seeking validation and start seeking mastery. Greatness is the expression of the fullest version of your will to power. The version that doesn't compete with others, but competes with your previous self. He warns you about something that destroys greatness more than failure ever could. The desire to fit in. The need to be accepted. The fear of standing out. The world often pressures strong individuals to shrink, to soften, to conform. Nietzsche wants you to resist this pressure. not out of rebellion, but out of fidelity to your potential. Your life is not a democracy. You don't need approval to grow. You don't need consensus to change. You don't need permission to become who you truly are. Nietzsche invites you to look at history. Every person who made a meaningful impact, whether in art, science, philosophy, or leadership, had moments of deep solitude, deep doubt, and deep misunderstanding. They were called strange, difficult, rebellious, or extreme. But they continued anyway. They followed their inner compass even when the world didn't understand. And eventually, it was the world that changed. Nietzsche wants you to carry this courage into your own life, even if your goals are not global but personal. Your transformation matters. Your growth matters. Your clarity matters. You don't need to aim for the world. You only need to aim for the highest version of yourself. As Nietzsche approaches the later chapters, his tone becomes both playful and sharp. He challenges romantic illusions, sentimental thinking, and superficial optimism. He believes real strength is built not on fantasy, but on facing reality as it is, with open eyes and a steady mind. He encourages humor, creativity, resilience, and even a certain lightness when dealing with life's chaos. Strength doesn't always look serious. Often, it looks like someone who can laugh at themselves, adapt to change, and stay flexible in uncertainty. Nietzsche's philosophy isn't cold, it's alive. It pulses with energy, with clarity, with courage. In the final movement of the book, Nietzsche introduces the idea of the free thinker who becomes a creator of meaning. This person doesn't just absorb culture, they shape it. They don't just follow trends, they question them. They don't live on the surface of life, they dig beneath it. This kind of person is rare, but not unreachable. Nietzsche believes anyone can move toward this ideal through curiosity, discipline, self-honesty, and a willingness to face discomfort. He explains that becoming such a person is not a one-time decision. It's a lifelong practice. It's a continuous evolution, a perpetual unfolding. Every stage of your life will challenge you with new beliefs to question, new fears to face, new strengths to develop. Nietzsche invites you to step into this evolving journey with confidence instead of hesitation. To see life not as a series of obstacles, but as a series of opportunities to reveal deeper parts of yourself. Now the book moves toward its emotional breakthrough, the idea that life does not hand you meaning. You create it. You shape it. You breathe life into it through your values, your decisions, your work, your courage, your discipline, and your vision. You cannot wait for meaning. You cannot inherit it. You cannot rely on society to give it to you. Meaning is personal. It comes from the battles you choose, the commitments you honor, the dreams you pursue, the person you strive to become. This is what Nietzsche means when he says you must go beyond good and evil, beyond external labels, beyond simplistic morality, beyond old frameworks, and build a life rooted in your own highest truth. And now, as the audiobook reaches its final moments, let's turn these ideas into practical, powerful actions you can use every day. Start by observing your inherited beliefs. Notice the ideas you accept automatically about success, failure, morality, ambition, relationships, work, and self-worth. Don't judge them. Just watch them. Awareness alone begins the transformation. Then, practice small acts of independent thinking. Question your habits. Question the standards you try to meet. Question the fears that stop you. Ask yourself, is this truly my belief, or did I borrow it from someone else? Spend time in solitude. Even 10 minutes a day, without noise, without distractions, just you and your thoughts. This is where your real voice becomes audible. This is where clarity emerges. And when you hear your inner voice, respect it. Follow it, even in small ways. Make decisions that align with your highest self, not with your fear or your desire for approval. Speak honestly with yourself. Acknowledge your desires without shame. Acknowledge your weaknesses without excuses. This self-honesty creates strength. Choose challenges on purpose. Don't run from difficulty. Move toward the challenges that help you grow, learning a new skill, facing a fear, taking responsibility, having difficult conversations, pursuing meaningful goals. With each step, you practice self-overcoming. With each step, you rise above your old self. Protect your mind from resentment. When you feel jealousy or bitterness, don't hide it. Understand it. It means you have a desire that is being suppressed. Instead of criticizing others, use that desire as a guide toward your own potential. Channel it into action. Create a personal code, a handful of principles that reflect your strongest values. These can be simple commitments like, I speak the truth, I avoid self-deception, I choose growth over comfort, I act from strength, not fear. Live by them. Let them anchor you when life becomes noisy. And finally, accept that becoming your highest self is a long journey. It won't be perfect. It won't be linear. But every step you take in honesty, in courage, in clarity moves you closer to a life that is fully your own. You are not meant to be a copy of anyone. You are meant to evolve beyond imitation, beyond conventions, beyond limitations. You are meant to grow into someone who creates meaning instead of waiting for it. Someone who shapes their own path instead of walking the default one. Someone who goes beyond good and evil and steps into the freedom of becoming who they truly are. That's all for today. We'll continue bringing you top book summaries that inspire change, clarity, and deep reflection. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep transforming. Transform your thoughts. Transform your life.